Hi, everyone. Good evening. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. Welcome. If you are new to my channel, I am Ellen Lewis from Crazy for You, and I am all about making sweaters that are fun to knit and fabulous to wear. And I am so excited to introduce you to my guest this evening, Irina Shaar. Irina and I just met each other less than a month ago, but it already feels like we've known each other forever. She has a wonderful, easy manner. She's very friendly and open, and her personality has allowed her to get inside the heads of the some of the biggest celebrities in the knitting community. And she shares those interviews on her very popular YouTube channel, Fiberchats. So I am delighted to bring her to be interviewed tonight. So please help me welcome Irina Shaar. Hi,
Hello.
Irina. How are
Love
you?
to see you again.
It's so nice to see you too. I'm so glad that we planned this and had this scheduled. So I have a couple quick questions that I like to do for stuff. So do you mind?
Absolutely, go for it.
Okay, so don't think too hard. These are quick, right? Okay. Knit or crochet?
Neat.
Okay, sweaters or accessories?
Accessories.
English or continental?
Continental.
Are you an early bird or a night owl?
Early bird.
Okay. Are you a traveler or a homebody?
I'm a traveler in my soul and homebody usually because of COVID, especially.
I actually know the answer to that last one, so that's not really fair. You just got back from a fabulous trip, didn't you?
Yeah.
Tell us about that.
I came back from three fabulous trips. So first I went to Chicago, where you and I were roommates.
That was
So
so fun.
and we can talk about how that happened. And then I came back, I did my laundry, I repacked, and we went on a family trip, first to Israel and then to Portugal. And it was very interesting because I have a friend whom I interviewed on my channel in Balgros. So she lives in Israel, and I reached out to her and I said, "Oh, I'm coming to Israel. Do you want to meet up?" And she said, "Well, how about I'll organize a little meet and greet with Israeli knitters who want to meet you?" And I was like, I didn't know there were any Israeli knitters who wanted to meet me or who knew about my existence. And she said, "You'll be surprised." And I was very surprised because there was like around 30 people who came there, and we did question and answer, and I brought some of my shawls to show them, and they were like looking at them and studying them. So it was like super fun. It was like impromptu sort of thing. And then the following day, Inbal and another friend of hers took me to a couple of yarn stores in Israel, and that was like really interesting because they're like very different from what I'm used to here. Um, and then
How are they different? How are they different? Or should we come back to that?
we can come back to that.
Okay.
And then we went to Portugal, and we were in Porto, where I found this charming little yarn store. And I'm gonna do a little YouTube video about like all my travels and like all the places I visited. And then we went to Lisbon, and I met one of my Fiberchat stars, designer Dorothy. Oh my god, like don't ask me for the last name, but Dorothy like came to Lisbon to see me, and she used to be a costume designer for like all the major movies. Like she was in Star Wars and like Marvels. I mean, you know, all the movies she's done costumes for. So she gifted me this gorgeous shawl. Oh my god, let me show you. Look at this.
Oh, look at that. And she designed that, and oh my gosh, that is beautiful.
I love that.
So we're going to have to get her name, and we'll put it in the description.
Dorothy Erickson here, but I'll send it to you
Okay.
later.
We'll put it in the chat here, but we can also put it in the description of the video afterward.
Sure.
Okay.
so that was like, and then I came back, and here I am now. So like I've been super busy with like editing all because I haven't been home for 3 weeks, and I had like a whole bunch of interviews scheduled before H&H. And of course I met so many people at H&H that my calendar until like September is just like boom, 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 like three interviews per day, like busy.
But that's how you like it, right?
I love that. Like I'm one of those people who like strive on stress. So,
Do you really, or do you just think you do?
no, I am like if I'm bored, then like I don't know what to do with myself. But like when I'm always on some sort of like deadline, or I need to do tests, like 2 test needs at the same time by the shortest deadline and 5 interviews, like this is my happiest place, you know.
This sounds like hell. This is my personal hell. This is why we get along.
Yeah.
So did you take knitting with you on your travels?
I did. Like I had like a lot of time on the airplane, so I did a lot of. And the thing is, like, I agreed to this test knit right before I went to Israel, and it has like really short deadline. It's a fingering weight sweater knitted on 2.5 millimeter needles.
And I can just see you knitting away on this, looking out the window and not even looking at your work, and just, oh, look over there.
You have to look at that work because there is like cables like that. It's like a maze.
I saw it on your Instagram today.
It's like, it's insane. So that's what I've been knitting on the plane mostly. I had some time in Israel, like downtime when I could knit it, but like Portugal was crazy. We did 20,000 steps every day. It was like insane. So there was
a lot.
no time. Yeah. Compared to my usual like 1,000 steps a day, you know, when I'm at home.
You know that if you put your like your watch just so that it counts your knitting.
Yeah, I wonder how many steps is that.
It's a lot. So what's on your needles right now?
Well, still that sweater. I have like a tight deadline to finish that, but I also agreed to participate in 2 sweater knit-alongs, which have like very similar deadline to that sweater. So like I'm stressing out at the moment. And then I agreed to another friend of mine, like sort of half bag, to test knit a shawl for her. And she's like, the yarn dyer sends free yarn to the testers, and who can say no to free yarn? So like I'm not that strong of a woman, you know, so I agreed to that. So I have no idea how I'm doing all of that, but it's gonna get done.
It'll be fabulous. So we should probably back up. Because you didn't start with the fabulous. Let's talk about your knitting journey. How did you learn to knit? How old were you? Who taught you?
Well, it's that sort of funny story. So my grandmother was extremely crafty. Like she was a seamstress. She knew how to knit, crochet. She did bobbin lace. Like she was making handmade noodles. She was amazing cook, amazing baker. Like everything she touched turned out fabulous. And I used to spend some summers with her, like as a kid. So one summer, I think I was like 8 or 9 or something, or 7, somewhere there. She taught me, it was like the end of the summer, and she taught me how to knit, how to purl. I think I knew how to cast on also. So like 3 things, right? So I knitted for about a week, and then she sent me back home, and I came home with 2 needles and that ball of yarn, and I was knitting that like really long scarf, like we all do. And my mom, basically, like my mom grew up, she was born right after the Second World War. So for her, the whole handicraft was sort of sign of poverty. It was sign of needs. So as soon as she was making some money, as soon as she got her, college degree, she was like done with the handicrafts. And so every time I would try to do, and I feel like I was crafty as a kid. Like I liked doing all these things. And for her, it was sort of like a red flag to the bull. Like she would rather I did anything else but. So she would come to my room and she would be like, how much time can you spend on this? Just go play with your friends. So eventually, like she got on my last nerve, and I just undid the whole thing. And I didn't touch knitting for a few decades. And then 6 years ago. Now it's about 6 years. 6 years ago, my girlfriend was pregnant with her fourth and last, as she assured me, child. And she said, I never had a baby shower. So I said, well, let me throw you a baby shower. And I was looking for something to make for the baby. I wanted something special. And I stumbled on a YouTube video making this knitting booties. So I was like, I think I can do it. I remember I did it like something knitting. It looks simple. So that was my first project, and I just never stopped. Like I've been knitting obsessively for the past 6 years, every single day.
So let's talk about this, like with your mom. I mean, for your mom, knitting and handcrafts were a sign of poverty, as you said. I think even 2 decades later, knitting and handcrafts were eschewed by women of a certain type, not so much it was about poverty, but it was about oppression or repression and domestication. And, women's liberation in the United States was like really huge. And nobody wanted anything to do with domesticity. They were actively rejecting knitting and sewing and cooking and, all of that. We were going off and we were getting educations and we were having jobs and all of that stuff. And I think it's just so sad,
Well, I think there is a part of us that wants to be a maker, that wants to go and like dig the dirt and grow something. Like we, especially like as women, we are still domestic, like in our nature, we are nurturing. And to see something happen like that you make with your own hands, to me, it's like magic, like you take yarn, take these needles, and suddenly like you create something that you can wear, you can be proud of, So I think it's like people coming back to it, and I think people learn to appreciate the handmade things.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, I was talking to a woman who had done some research, and she was telling me about an article that she came across about how, and this was in the shop, about how knitting and domesticity and women, it goes back to like our Neanderthal days, because women bonded over the work. They were the gatherers. They were the keeper of the flame and the household, and they did all the things, and they did it together, and they bonded in that way over their work, while the guys are out, hunting mastodons or whatever. And so they weren't bonding over their work, We, however, I mean, and I think even today, it's not work, but we bond over the things that we do collectively as women. And that's the appeal of the knitting circle or the quilting bee or the stuff that we do together in churches and synagogues. It's the women who are making the things. I mean, and I think you pointed out, we are makers, and we make something from nothing. I mean, that's what women do, right?
Well, another thing also, it's also this sense of instant connection, instant belonging, because you have common language. It's like you're coming to the foreign country and you're finding this one person that speaks your language, you're immediately drawn to them. And even if you take these two people and ask me how I know, because I'm an immigrant in this country, right? So like you can become friends with the most unlikely person who you would never be friends in your own country. But because you have this like one common bond in common, it's like immediate connection, right? And with us as knitters or crocheters or crafters, makers, it's the same thing. Like you see kindred spirit right away. Like, why did I invited you to be my roommate after 45 minutes conversation? Because we speak the same language.
Yeah, but that was so funny. So we were introduced by a mutual friend, and we hadn't even like met each other. We exchanged some emails, and we decided to do each other's YouTube channel, and I thought that'd be really fun. And you did me first. And so you were talking about H&H, and I had already made a command decision that as a shop, we were not going to go and whatever. And you were talking about it. And I was like feeling kind of left out. Right. So I'm looking at my calendar real quick, trying to get a flight. And then I texted you and I'm like, I booked a flight. Where are you guys staying?
Yeah. And I was like, well, if you want to stay with me, I have an empty bed in my room.
That was, I mean, that was just so kind. I mean, that was just so nice. And guys, let me tell you, it wasn't like just an empty bed. I mean, Irina travels in style. We were like the 24th floor of this
It surprised
hotel.
me. They actually surprised me with that because I arrived super early on Tuesday, and I guess it was before any of the guests arrived. So because I came there for the VIP influencer event that was taking place on Tuesday, so I arrived like super early, and I thought for some reason it was like at 12. It was actually at 3. So I arrived like, and I was afraid that the flight is gonna get delayed and whatever. I arrived to Chicago like 9 o'clock in the morning. So I was like the first person to enter that hotel, and they were, I guess, so happy to see me. They were like, "Would you like to be upgraded to this special tower?" And I was like, "Let's go to the tower."
They knew that you were a YouTube star.
I doubt.
So, when you were a little girl learning to knit with your grandmother, what were you thinking about wanting to be when you grew up? Did you want to be a ballerina? What did you want to do?
I wanted to be a mathematician. That was my thing.
Did you really?
I was like obsessed with math. I used to do calculus for fun. Like
That is like my daughter. Really? Okay. So that was really the thing you wanted to do. So how did that progress for you?
well, my parents, like growing up in Russia, it was sort of like all about the liberal arts is just sort of frowned upon, and you sort of need to choose profession from get-go, from like the time you are, going into college. Like you have to know what you're gonna do. It's like very different with how like my kids choosing their education nowadays. But when I said I want to do applied math, my parents were like, "And you're gonna do what? Teach in high school somewhere? How about you're gonna go into the engineering?" So I went into engineering school, and by the time I
That
graduated,
is applied math, though. Engineering is applied math.
right, but like I wanted to like study, like I wanted to be like more into academics, into pure math.
I see. Okay. Yes.
And so by the time I graduated from college, it was 1992, aging myself here, and the Soviet Union fell apart. So there were no jobs, there were no industries, basically. And I came here to get my MBA because like I didn't know what to do with myself. So it was like pivoting, basically. So I came to get my MBA, and then I met my husband while I was in schools, and we got married, and I never came back. So that's how I started here.
Did you finish your MBA?
Yep.
Where did you go to school?
Northeastern.
Okay. Very
Boston.
cool.
Yeah.
Did you ever have a chance to work as an engineer in the United
I
States?
never worked as an engineer. Like I started with when I finished the MBA, I was working in finance, and then I did some construction design work for a while, but never like as a engineer.
Mhm.
I never wanted to be an engineer. That's the funny part. It was sort of like one of those things you do to please your parents. And then as you grow, you're like, well, why should I please them? It's my life. It's like, let me find what pleases me. And I feel like knitting is me being a rebellious teenager in my like 40s, like proving that like whatever brings me joy and whatever makes me happy has to be in my life. Like it's part of that. And my mom, until now, I mean, she sees things I make, and she's in awe. She respects it. She's like, she sees what I'm doing on YouTube, like it's impressive for her. And yet there's always going to be a question, well, like, do you want to spend your time like this? Like you could do this and you could do that. It's like it never goes away.
She can't imagine that you're actually happy doing what you're doing.
No, I mean, she knows, and it's like when I go to places like H&H, or when I go to knitting festivals like Wogo, like Rhinebeck, right? To me, this is my happy place. To me, this is my playground. I get to meet like all these people that I'm talking over Zoom, that I'm meeting through emails, through Instagram, right? I get to see them in real life, and it's like this immediate connection, and we have so much in common. So it's like she knows I'm happy with what I'm doing, and I could never even predict that it's gonna grow like it does, and that I'm gonna be able to talk to all these people, you know?
So how did you get going with the whole YouTube thing? How did you decide that you wanted to do that? I mean, did you have a vision that says, I want to be a YouTube star? Or did you just sort of, you know,
To
did
tell
it
you
emerge?
it.
What?
I had no vision whatsoever. So I was one day on Instagram, and my Instagram at that time was like a few thousand followers. And I was thinking to myself that I have these followers, but I don't really know many of them, and I don't know much about them. And so I was talking to Alison Randall. So Alison is a Shetland designer. She does Fair Isle designs. She's actually the patron of Shetland Wool Week this year, and her hat is the hat for the Shetland Wool Week. So we became friends over COVID, and I was chatting with her, and I said, what if we went live on Instagram and I just asked you some questions? And Alison had a complete panic attack. she was like, I'll need all the questions before time. I'll need to think about it. I never done that. I don't know if that's a good idea. And I was like, oh, that's okay. Like, I'm just thinking out loud. And then I was done talking to her, and another, this yarn dyer, Josh Stein, he's the dyer behind Blue Fiber Company. So he texted me like about something else. And I said, Josh, like, what do you think about this idea? And he said, well, let me just finish my cake and we can go live. Mind you, I've never been live. I had no idea how to go live. So I had to like try to figure it out. I called some of my friends and I was like, how the heck, where do I press, you know, like, how do I go live?
Was this in 2020?
Yeah. And so we went live. I didn't know anything about him, like, because I wasn't preparing for it. It was just sort of like this. So we did the interview for like about 20 minutes. And as soon as I was done with him, Alison texted me and said, you know, I saw how you did it. How about we'll do it tomorrow? And so that's how it started, like live on Instagram. So I did a couple interviews there. And then one day I woke up and I thought, what if I'll ask Hazel Tyndall? I don't know Hazel Tyndall. Hazel Tyndall doesn't know me, but like I can write to her because I always admired her. I always thought like so highly of her. So I woke up and I was like, okay, I'm going to write to Hazel Tyndall. So I wrote to her and I said, dear Miss Tyndall, I've been a huge fan of yours. I would love to go live with you on my Instagram and like ask you a few questions. And she said, oh, I'm a huge fan of yours. I love your lace, and sure. And that was like really probably the pivotal moment. That was like sort of when I understood that it doesn't have to be just people I know and people I have relationship with. It can be anyone, as long as I have the bravery to ask them. And so I did probably like 9 or 10 interviews live on Instagram. And then my son came home one day, and he at the time was working at YouTube in Google. And he was like, well, you know, it's all very cute what you're doing there, but you're on the wrong platform. Nobody does hour-long interviews on Instagram. So how about
He's right.
Yeah. So he's like, how about you start a YouTube channel? And so I had to like learn how to upload things from Instagram to YouTube. So if you watch those first 10 interviews, it's complete mess. It's like it's unedited, like basically lifted off Instagram, but there's certain charm to them. Like, you know,
Yeah, no, there absolutely is. And I mean, I wrote a blog post about cherishing your early work, you know, and how important it is to kind of be okay with that, you know, because that was so pure, you know, those first bits are so fresh and so, like, say, unscripted and unedited. And yeah, it's like kind of cringy. I mean, I think about my early stuff. I mean,
yeah, it's very cringy, but it's also, you know, I was watching this guy. He has a YouTube channel called Channel Makers, and he talks about how to improve your channel, how to improve your editing, better light, better cameras, like all this jazz. And one of the things he said, like, really stuck with me. He said, you know, it doesn't matter who you are. People, like, you're gonna find audience for yourself, like, regardless. You don't have to be articulate. You don't have to be clever. You don't have to be funny. You just have to be you, and your audience will find you. The only requirement is that you have to like what you're doing. Like if you watch your own video, it has to speak to you. You have to be like, think it's funny. You have to think it's charming. You have to think it was like interesting. And so for me, it's like it became my thing. Like when I'm editing the video, it's not about necessarily editing anything, because I'm just, it's like a lot of times it's just slapping the beginning and the end and like calling it editing. But to me, it's like to see again, like if I'm enjoying this interview, like being a little bit on the bird eye view from the outside. And 99% of the time, I'm like laughing again with the conversations. So I guess, it's entertaining in my eyes, in this respect.
Yeah. I mean, if you're having a good conversation with a person, it's, it's sort of fun to relive it. I mean, how often do you get to relive a conversation with somebody that, you really enjoyed? So.
But what's interesting? Like when I look back at all the interviews I've done, and at this point there is probably close to 300 interviews out there, I still remember each person that I interviewed, and I remember our conversation. So to me, this is like the best part of it, because I got to see how they come up with designs. I got to see how they come up with color inspirations. I got to like become, and most of them are like my good friends now. We're still in touch and we still talk. So to me, this is the best part about having the YouTube channel.
So let's talk about your lace, because that is so impressive. I mean, those of you who are like, read my blog and get the newsletter and everything. I mean, this is the woman who is knitting with the 280, right? 8,600 yards in 100 grams. It's like, oh my God. Why? I mean,
this is a 1 millimeter needle, just for comparison purposes.
Oh my God. Okay. So, I mean, honestly, when I think about it, and I hear that you wanted to be a mathematician your whole life, I mean, I have to think that lace, that you do that because your brain is not adequately challenged by daily life.
I mean, probably. It's almost like became like an Olympic sport to see how far you can push it.
Where did you start? So where did you start with that? What was your first lace piece?
So first thing, I was knitting scarves for probably like 3-4 months. Something like my son was joking, like it's time to snap out of rectangular shape. Like I don't think I even knitted like a triangular shawl at that time. It was all like squares or rectangulars. And one day I was strolling through Instagram and I saw a post by Monique Boonstra, who is a passion for lace on Instagram. So I saw some of her lace and I was like, oh my God, like, what is that? And so she was like, oh, this is Shetland lace. And I've never heard of Shetland lace or Shetland tiles for this matter at that time. So I was like, okay, what do you do when you want to learn about something? And I was like, I'm going to go to my local library and just get some books on Shetland lace. So I went to the library and they had one book on Shetland lace.
Was it that pink paperback one?
No, it was the book by Elizabeth Lovick called The Magic of Shetland Shawls.
Okay.
Shetland lace shawls. And on the cover of that book, there is a blue stole with the heart shape on it. And I was like, oh, that's cute. I want to try to do that. I mean, nobody explained me that Shetland lace was supposed to be difficult, or that it's like one of the most difficult laces on earth, right? So I just followed the instructions and I made this stole. And then, so from then, basically, it became like the more I was doing, the more I was learning.
What size needle was that first heart motif?
I think it was like 3 millimeters. It wasn't tiny. And I did it with like heavy lace yarn. So it wasn't really fine lace. It was sort of dipping into the lace. And then I started, I think like the second project I did with Shetland lace was Love Dark by Sharon Miller, which is probably like one of the most difficult shawls on the planet.
What's it called?
Love Dark.
Okay.
DARG. So
watching, I want you to tell me in the chat if you knit lace, if you've tried lace, if you've heard of this, and if you have any questions about lace for Irina. So sorry, go ahead.
So there is a group on Facebook called Find Shetland Lace that was actually organized by Monique Boonstra, and I joined it. I was like probably one of the first 7 people who joined it, just because of the timing. Like, she was organizing the group, and I was talking to her about like, what is it that you're knitting, right?
It's pretty nichey too, isn't it?
And at the time, there were like probably 20, 30 people who joined it, and they were all experienced Shetland lace knitters. And then there was me. And they decided to organize a knit along for Love Dark by Sharon Miller. And I was like, well, what can possibly go wrong? Count me in, right?
But you had already knit it.
One. Yeah. So that was my second one. Well,
did you tell them that?
No, but they were sort of like scared for me. I was not prepared for that show. I was like, I still don't know if I'm prepared for this show. That's the honest truth. Like, to do it like properly.
Oh, so this is not a shawl you had knit before. So what's the name of this one that's so scary?
Love Dark.
Love Dark. Okay, I'll have to look that up. I have no interest in knitting this, but I would love to see it.
So I jumped right in. And the thing is, like, that book and Sharon Miller in general, like, she's brilliant. She's like basically like Shetland Lace Bible. Like, people go to her as a reference book. But that book is written for people who know how to knit Shetland lace. It's not for like complete beginner, really. I did not understand that. So I jumped in, and it's like, like learning Dostoevsky in Russian, like suddenly, it's like coming for your first class and like going full force. So I asked a lot of questions, and they were extremely patient with me. Like, I'm sure they were rolling their eyes at me, because like half of the questions that I asked, like now looking back, were completely stupid, but I just didn't know. So I asked and I asked and I asked, and at the end of it, I had a shawl on my hands, and from that point, it sort of like gave me this freedom of like, what can possibly go wrong in just stitches? Because the reality of it, Shetland lace is very simple. It seems complicated, right? But
tell me about that. I mean, I don't even know.
There is
I'm not a lace knitter. What is it? What makes it so hard? What makes it so special?
Okay, so like regular lace, you knit on the front and then you purl the back. So the back is like your rest row, right? Like nothing happens, you just purl. With Orenburg lace, it's all garter, but like majority of things happen on the front. With Shetland lace, there is no front, there is no back. It's lace every row. And the directions of the stitches change depending if you're on the front or the back. So it's just like every row is like a new page in the book. You forget everything you did before, and you just like start all over again. So
because they're long rows too, right?
Right. Well, it depends on how big the thing you're knitting. So, but the idea is like there's hardly any purl stitches there. It's mostly garter. And if you know how to knit 2 together and slip K and knit 3 together and do yarn over, you're golden. Like, that's all you need to know. So it's just a matter of patience. It's a matter of like persistence, and you just go row after row, and it's not that hard. And you can also I did a lot of knit alongs for Shetland lace, and lots of times, like for the simple patterns, I would say, use fingering weight. Like you can use worsted weight. Like, it doesn't matter. As long as you understand how to do it, you can do it in any weight. Like, I did this scarf for my mom. She wanted something like a little heavier but lacy. I did it with decay, and it's fine. Like, it doesn't have to be that,
No, I get that. And I think too, and I talk about this a lot. I mean, I make a joke. I have knit lace. I don't love it, but there's the knitting lace, which is confusing. And then knitting with really, really, really fine yarn is its own technical skill,
right?
So I love the idea of doing it.
It starts with gossamer. Like, people start with, heavy lace, and then you go to final lace, then you go to cobweb. So it's like, I was joking saying that it's like Olympic sport, that you go thinner and thinner with needles and with yarn, but it's also like acquired skills, because at some point, like when I started and I tried to do gossamer, like I just couldn't control it. Like stitches were sleeping and running away, screaming from me, and now it's sort of easy. And it's not easy. Like when I start the new project, it's never easy. Like the first few rows, it's always like you feel awkward, but then it becomes, you relax and you get into the rhythm of it, and it becomes like your friend,
Yeah, I mean, I think the first couple rows of any knitting, I mean, when I teach beginning knitters, that first, it's the hardest part is the first 2 rows. I mean, you don't have a critical mass of fabric on your needle. So, no, I get what you're saying.
But basically, like at some point, I made it my sort of mission, if you want to say, in life, to empower people to try it, because people are scared of just the word lace. So I did some tutorials. I did a lot of knit alongs, and actually I have a knit along running in Fiberchats group on Ravelry whole year, where there is like 3 patterns to choose from, and one of them is for absolute beginners. And I did row by row tutorial showing every stitch and how to read the charts and all these things. And I did like mini tutorials on crafting. I did interviews with some of the Shetland lace designers. And so like if you want to try, there is nothing stops you but you, it's like you can definitely, like everybody who knows how to knit a sweater absolutely can knit Shetland lace. Like there's no way you can't,
No, I get that. And I think too, part of it is if you aren't sure, it's very frightening to know if you've made a mistake, because if you drop a stitch or something, it's not as easy picking that up, even as it is with a one side, like a stockinette faced lace.
Right. Well, there are tricks, right? So you hold your needles differently. You hold your needles like very close to the tips, so you have more control of your knitting, so the stitches don't slide. And let me tell you, the stitch markers are your friends. You put your stitch markers after every single repeat, and you put lifelines. Like there is a reason why they call them lifelines. I mean, I personally like living on the edge, living dangerously, so I don't do lifelines usually, unless I'm test knitting. I don't do the, but like I've regretted it a few times, Yeah.
Yeah. Then how you have to rip it out, right? I mean,
like the worst thing that ever happened to me was when I was knitting dark blue skinny gossamer shawl, and my phone rang, and it was my house home, and the only people that call me on my house phone, telemarketers. Like I just have that phone exclusively for abuse by telemarketers. And don't ask me why. I jumped, the knitting flew, and I saw those stitches running out like in all different directions, and it took me like over an hour and 30 rows down to pick it up to where I could restart again. So that day I did regret not using Lifeline, but
yeah. So who are your knitting heroes? When you think, oh, I would really love to be like, when I grew up, I want to be like
Jennifer Bill. Oh my God. Like that woman is an absolute knitting genius and design genius. I was just like, I just posted on my Instagram today this sweater that I'm test knitting for her. I don't think there is like another designer of this caliber is alive today. Like, I mean, honestly, like I think she is it, ultimate. Her techniques, her designs, like they made me a better knitter. Like I've been test knitting for her a bunch of times in the past few years. And every single one of them, like I'm looking at it and I'm like, you must be kidding me. Like I know none of those techniques. I've done intarsia with her. I've done like this one has, I can't even remember the names, but I mean like things that she does, it's like you don't even see in the fashion magazines. I don't understand how she comes up with it. There's cables, there's Fair Island, the flat, there's I did a cardigan that was like entire cardigan of bird eye, And bird eye consider like one of the hardest Shetland techniques. I mean, people who test knitted for her like were very experienced. They were crying from that cardigan. And I'm like, I don't understand how she manages to sell her patterns, but she has huge following. They all buying her patterns, and it's like, and I see people knitting it. Like the way she writes her patterns, everybody can follow it.
What is the one you're working on now? I'm going to write it down.
Oh, I can't even pronounce it.
Where is she from? Is it Jennifer Gill, Gill?
Beale. Bill.
Oh.
She's Canadian.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we'll have to look her up. That would be really fun. I probably will just smile and wave, but
she's celebrating 5 years of her design career right now.
Wow.
But
so what kind of things are making this sweater so cool? What makes it? I mean, it's a cardigan. It's got a set-in sleeve. Is it in the round? How is it done?
So the sleeves are knitted basically like there is reduction here that like forms into a sleeve somehow, and then there is separate piece that attaches to the, like, I can't even understand how it's being knitted, to be honest. Like, I'm just knitting row by row without questioning it, because when I look at it, I'm like, how is it? There is no separation for the sleeves. It just somehow like magically happens.
That's cool.
No, like,
don't you think? Go ahead.
Well, I have this one shawl here. Let me see if I can find it quickly. I don't see it. She did this here. It just, where's the one? Look at this.
Oh my, that's fun.
Yeah. So this is like all Fair Isle in the round, and the lace is like the single lace. I mean, and the shape of it is just like it's
yeah,
like,
that's really different.
Yeah. So this goes on the back, right?
Yes.
You can
Isn't
use
that pretty?
As your scarf.
And then the Fair Isle is in the round, or is that flat?
No, it's in the round. And then that border like almost killed me. Like that was a whole skein of yarn just for the border, and it's an applied border. So that took like forever and a half to knit. And the thing is with her, like she likes to use thin yarn and she likes to use thin needles. So you think it's like, oh, it's a shawl. How long can it take? Let me tell you, it was like 6 months of knitting 6 hours a day.
Oh my. Wow, that's a lot.
Yeah.
But you can pretty much whip out a shawl and pretty fast.
Well, I mean, if it's a regular shawl, I can do it in a week.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like, I mean, if it's Stew and West shawl, it'll take me 3 weeks, but 2 weeks if I don't have to wait for the next clue, you know.
But he's got 6 skeins of yarn in there, 6 skeins of fingering weight yarn on his stuff. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's really fun. And so you like to do test knits.
I love to do test knits just because I feel like it's sort of, first of all, I'm learning new skills. And I love the fact that the designers trust me with something I've never done before. Like Julie Knits in Paris is like one of my favorite designers. And first time she asked me to knit a sweater, I was like, but Julie, I never knitted a sweater before. And she's like, perfect, here's the pattern, you know? And I love that, because if they trust my ability, I have to trust my ability. And they always prove me wrong, and I always manage to finish it. And I feel like I'm becoming a better knitter through these tests.
Oh, absolutely. I think the more different designers' patterns that you can knit, I mean, that's how you learn how different people think and different people design. And have you ever test knit for something that was just really, really bad? You don't have to tell me who, but
there was one time this lady asked me to test knit, and it was the simplest shawl, and the math just didn't add up. So I told her, like, row whatever 6, there is a mistake. And she was like, I checked it, it's fine. So I actually charted her, showing where there is a mistake. And she said, well, another tester that does it didn't find this mistake. And I was like, well, can we talk all together? And the other tester said, there was a mistake, but I just improvised. And I was like, I'm sorry, is that a test knit or improvisational exercise here? And
right. What are the rules for test knitting? I mean, you have to sort of do it right there. You can't just go in and say, because the average knitter isn't going to be able to do that.
No, plus, I mean, the whole idea of test knit is to make sure that like anybody who's following those instructions is going to get exactly the same result as you designed, right? So, and then she said, well, you're probably just not ready for this. And I said, I probably not. and then she apologized like a little bit later, but like, life is too short.
Oh my goodness. Wow.
But majority of times, like even if there are mistakes, I mean, I had situations when like I would find a major mistake and I had one test knit when I had to redo something like 4 times, but I don't mind that as long as like we're on the same page, as long as the designer is like, the designer might be just struggling with whatever happening and like redesigning as we go. I don't have problem with that as long as it's like we respect each other and each other's time,
Right. So let's talk a minute about the Facebook group that you started with David Van de Kamp.
Yeah. So
he's very fun, by the way. If you don't follow him on Instagram, guys, you need to follow him because he's hilarious. In fact, before I ever met you, somebody, I guess it was Jana, had sent me some reels that she thought were so cute, and they were his. And then when I was like, oh my gosh, it's David.
So when David and I met David on Instagram, and he was knitting a shawl, and I said, well, when are you going to publish this shawl? And he said, what do you mean? So he wasn't designing. I mean, he was designing. He just didn't know he was designing. He was just knitting at that time. So I helped him find the testers. I helped him find the editor for it. And he published his first design. And since then, he's unstoppable. He has like dozens of designs now. So when we like first starting to try to like promote his designs, we found out that like majority of groups don't allow any self-promotion. So he couldn't put the link to his shawls. I was test knitting for him. I would put a picture and they would be like, no, you're helping him to self-promote, and they would kick us out of the group. So they would take down the posts. And it got to be like so annoying that one day we were talking and we're like, we should start our own group. And so we started Knitters Gonna Knit on Facebook. It's been 3 years since we started it. And the idea was to create a platform where fiber artists could promote their fiber-related businesses. So we reached out to all our friends who were designers, yarn store owners, yarn dyers, accessory makers, like anybody who has any kind of fiber-related business. And we said, publish there, like put the links to your new patterns, ask for test knitters, promote your yarn. If you have some sale or if you have new color, just post it there. And very quickly it turned into this community where people were collaborating. So designers were discovering new yarn dyers. People who like never even knew that there is such thing as test knit suddenly were becoming test knitters, and designers who were struggling to find test knitters were finding them. And now it's over 24,000 people there. So, it's became quite a community. Oh, I don't hear you now.
Sorry. It's certainly, it probably wasn't a quick growth, but it certainly has grown beyond just people promoting their own stuff. And maybe I'm wrong, but when I'm in there, I see just like regular knitters, which I think is so cool.
No, it's regular, majority of them are regular knitters, but the thing is, like, we wanted this family, like we often say, like, welcome to Knitters Gonna Knit family, because we wanted this atmosphere of collaboration, atmosphere of support. So like the first rule, at the beginning, we had one rule: be kind. We didn't want snarky remarks. We didn't want somebody to like make you feel inferior. So like that was our first rule. Then it's sort of, as the group grew, like we had to add a couple more rules, but like the idea is the same. It's like we just don't want you to spam us with some unnecessary things, but like it's all about being supported. It's all about like answering questions, sharing your expertise, like telling people who struggle with how to fix their mistakes, like all of these things. So yeah, majority are like regular knitters, but it's also a place for people who like want to tell about their business. Because how, like, if you have the small business that you're trying to grow, right, like if you're a yarn dyer or if you're a designer and you want to promote your new pattern, it's very hard to spread the word. Like Ravelry became huge, so it's like so easy to get lost there. So it's another opportunity to promote your business.
Yeah. So how big would be too big, do you think? Like
I think,
Ravelry is huge. What,
right.
millions of people?
I don't, well, the only thing, like, we are the only two admins, right? So David
Right.
and I are the only two people who are running this group. So at some point, we had some people trying to take advantage of the group. So we put the post approval and we put the member approval. So that's like the only thing, right? Like, because it's just the two of us, maybe you'll have to wait half an hour until you're approved or your post is approved. But he lives in China now and I'm in the US, so it's like we're covering 24 hours basically. Like when he's awake, like I'm sleeping, and vice versa, so it's working great. But like if it grows beyond our capability, we'll just get more moderators.
Right. So in your YouTube channel, Fiberchats, where do you, I mean, you said you didn't start with a vision or anything, but I mean, kind of as this has grown and become more of a thing, I know you must be thinking, like, what is your vision now? I mean, you must have established some kind of vision for it, some goals.
I have
Maybe not. I mean, and that's okay too, but just tell me what you're thinking about that for the future.
No, like at the very beginning, like one of the first people I interviewed was Suzanne Bryan, and Suzanne has a YouTube channel, Knitting with Suzanne Bryan, and it's like over 100,000 subscribers. She's a hand master knitter from the Knitting Guild Association, so she has like all the tutorials. And she used to do like once in a while, she used to do interviews on her channel. And I remember like asking her for an interview, and she was very surprised because like with all her fame and with all her like huge YouTube following, she has never been interviewed until that moment. And she said, like, I like the idea of your channel, but are you afraid you're gonna run out of people to interview? And I said, no, I really don't think so. And that was 2 years ago. And now I'm like 2 years into it, and I feel like I'm just scratching the surface. Like there is so many talented people out there. And my idea from the very beginning, basically, of the channel was to create this library of fiber talent. So you don't have to watch every single episode. You can come into my channel, look at the playlist, see what's going to catch your eye, and just watch one interview, one conversation. Right. And some people, like it's all different kinds of fiber artists. So there are embroidery people, crocheters, knitters, macrame people, like anything you can imagine. And I wanted to continue supporting the underdog. I wanted to find like interesting original fiber artists. They don't have to be super famous. I didn't want to go just after big names. I didn't want to pursue just famous people. I wanted to find people you've never heard of. I wanted to find people that like have 100 followers on Instagram, but like super talented. And I want to continue doing that, So the more my channel grows, the more I'm getting introduced to different people. And some of them are super famous. And, like I'm never going to say no to big opportunities like that. But I want to keep it open to everyone. So
I love that.
I have now like more times, like when I started the channel, most of the times I would be the one begging for interview and trying to convince somebody to come to my channel. And nowadays I have a lot of people approaching me and saying, like if you ever have time, I would love to be on your channel. And I never said no to anyone.
That's nice. I love that.
So that's my
So, I mean, the thing about your interviews is, it's very easy. I mean, I think we talked about this at H&H. I love Stephen B. I mean, he's hilarious. And, you know, it was the first time I've seen him for forever, but it was the first time I ever kind of really went up to him. And did I tell you what I did? I mean,
Tell us. We're not-
no, I think I probably told, but you know, it just, you're there in person, and you know, he's always being fabulous, right? He's always being Stephen B, but you're able to get through that persona that people put out there, you know. I mean, Stephen B, Stephen West, others, you know, they're very invested in their public persona, and they have to be. I mean, that's their brand, and it's what makes them fun and fabulous. But you know, there's definitely, it's sort of like Superman and Clark Kent. You know, you're able to get to Clark Kent and find out what it's like to be Clark Kent. You know, how do you do that?
I feel like it's probably because I'm genuinely interested. Like that's probably at the bottom of it, because I'm asking people onto my channel that I find intriguing, I find interesting, and I'm asking them questions that I want to know.
Right.
I'm asking them questions that like other people don't ask because they think, well, you know, it's like it's private, it's something, you know, we don't want to discuss. And the funniest part, like I remember interviewing Olga Jazzy, and she said, you know, I've been interviewed by like everyone, by magazines, by everybody. And your interview was very different because you talked about things that nobody else dares to ask. And somehow it felt fine to talk about it. You know, so to me, this is like the best part. Like when I interview people who have been interviewed by others, and I remember also like, you know, Dario Tubiano, like he's my biggest celebrity crush of knitting world. Like I just find him adorable. So he is like super famous in Italy. Like he's been on every TV channel there. He's been in numerous magazines. Like a lot of people interview him. And I was interviewing him, and after the interview, we talked for like another hour. And this is like my favorite part. Like what people don't see about Fiberchats is like all the before and after. Like this is my treat, right? So we were talking about the interview afterwards, and he said, I feel like you don't write the questions. Like you listen to what I said and then you continue the conversation. Like I never had that experience. And to me, that was like the biggest compliment.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for me, I like to have questions because you never know how the conversation is going to go. It might not be the easiest person in the world to interview. But yeah, I mean, I think that's the best interview, is that when you are actually just having a conversation. So I love that. I think
I mean,
that's
my biggest problem is I forget there is audience. I'm so invested in the conversation. I'm so like into that, right? I'm like thinking of what I'm going to ask, and I'm like listening to the answer, that I forget that people are watching us. And I forget, you know, it's like if you're being a proper YouTuber, you're supposed to engage your audience, and you're supposed to tell them, write this question in your comments, and like don't forget to subscribe, and don't forget to click this like.
I hate that part.
I forget all of that. Like I'm just in the conversation. So for me, like my favorite kind of comment, when somebody says, I was nodding and I was replying and I was participating. So to me, it's like, it makes me feel good, because like I don't want people to feel left out. I don't want them to feel like they are just eavesdropping, right? Like I want them to feel like they're part of it. But it's all about the guest and what they're saying, and like
I
about
didn't do a very good job of that this time.
right?
Normally I do, but
Please don't forget to subscribe, like, and click the share button.
yes, share it with your friends. You should. I mean, honestly, if you have not seen Irina's channel, I mean, really, really cool interviews with people that you're like, wow, you know, and you're probably thinking, I wonder what they're like, you know? So you have some fun people coming up, don't you?
I have so many interesting people coming up, actually. I mean, including your interview. So your interview is going to be posted on my channel this Saturday.
See, she told you she did lowly unknown people too, right?
So Ellen is going to be 12 p.m. Eastern Saturday on my channel.
Uh,
And I was just before we started this, I was telling Ellen that I was listening, like I was editing our interview, and I was like giggling through the whole thing because like you could see that connection. Like it was first time we ever met, right? And it was like immediately easy friendship. So that coming up. I have interview with London Kane coming up. So I met London at Vogue Knitting last past January, and then I saw her again at H&H, and I finally convinced her to be on my channel. And she's such a darling. Like I loved talking to her. It was like really interesting. So her interview is coming up. And then there is going to be a recap of H&H. And I just interviewed Darren Stern, who is the organizer for H&H. And so there's going to be my recap, but also like some of the interviews that happen at H&H and after that. And then there is some secret things in the work that I can't yet share, but super.
I already know what they are.
So I'm super excited about that. But
Congratulations. I mean, that's really cool. Is there somebody that like you're a superstar that you would really love? I mean, have you ever gone to anybody and really not, they said like, no, I'm just not going to do that.
I mean, there's a bunch of people who said no. It's never 100% yes. But like you don't know why, or like I know why people say no. So some people are just extremely busy. Some people are shy. Like Jennifer Beal, I've been asking her to be on my channel for as long as my channel exists, and she just doesn't like doing interviews. So like I know if one day I'll convince her, it's not against the channel. It's just like her dislike of doing things like that. So like, and some people are just like, I asked Petite Knits, but she was like superbly busy. She doesn't have time for that. I would love to have Jorge Locatelli on my channel just because I think she's so down to earth, so nice, and so humble. But she's also super busy.
She is busy. And, you know, I'm a big fan of hers. And she was at Vogue Knitting Live, and I met her, and that was really great. And I reached out to her on Instagram to see if she would be interested in coming to teach. And, you know, I would pay whatever she needed to get her there. And she has this really great kind of philosophy, is that she only goes to places to teach that she's never been before. Did you know that?
I like that. I didn't know that. Yeah.
Isn't that cool? I mean, so she's really leveraging, you know, what she does to engage her second love, which I guess is travel. And more power to her, you know?
Yeah.
I love that.
I love meeting new people. I like discovering new fiber artists. So like if I'm on Instagram, more than half of the time I'm just scrolling through like finding people section, you know, and like just reaching out to like random people. I mean, people like I saw recently like some embroidery artist that did something like phenomenal, and I reached out and I said, listen, I would love to have you on my channel. Check it out. If you agree, like we'll find time. It's like 45 minutes. I'll make it happen, you know? So it's like, it used to be 80% no. Now it's maybe like 80% yes, but you know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I get that. You know, I think you would be really happy. I don't know if you've already done it, but Erica Knight.
Not yet.
Not yet. You asked her. I mean, she does so many cool things. I mean, she is like really out there, you know? I love her. I love like
I went to like you're talking about popularity of the YouTube channels, right? And sometimes when I go to shows like when we were at H&H, you were introducing me to people, but I was introducing you to people. Like I knew a lot of people who were on my channel, and there were like a lot of people who like I would like to have on my channel. And then I went to New Hampshire Ship and Wool, and I knew not a single person, and not a single person knew me. And you might think that like, oh, that's unfortunate. I thought it was like so empowering. I thought it was like so brilliant that there is like this huge festival and nobody knows me and I don't know anybody, because that just shows how like wide this world of fiber arts are, and how many more possibilities are out there for all this networking, you know.
Absolutely. And I don't think you will ever run out of people to interview. I
I-
mean, it is like that whole spider web, you know, tell a friend, and it's exponential growth. It's fractals. It's brilliant.
I-
It's brilliant. I'm so excited. And it's been such a pleasure to be able to chat with you. I have missed you. I'm glad that
we
got
had
I
time together at H&H. It was like
we
really
did. We did. And we need to get together again in person. So
well.
so let's just recap real quick where everybody can find you.
So I'm Fiberchats everywhere. Basically, there is Fiberchats group on Ravelry. I'm Fiberchats on TikTok, on Instagram, on YouTube, and Knitter's Gonna Knit on Facebook. And
Awesome.
if anybody wants to email me, it's fiberchats@gmail.com.
Wonderful, wonderful. So I really appreciate you being here, and to the people, lovely Whitney and Evelyn and Glenn and Anne and Terry and Gwen and Sandy and Rita and Norma and Shelley and Lucinda. Thank you so much for being here. It's a pleasure to have you. And Irina, as always, it is wonderful to see you. And I can't wait to see what is next for Fiber Chats.
And don't forget to tune in and see Ellen's interview on Fiberchats on Saturday at 12 p.m. Eastern.
Thank you. Thank you so much. All right. So next time on the YouTube channel, I'm going to be talking about hand knit gifts and how to level those up, because it's time to start thinking about that. So until next time, keep knitting and create something beautiful. Good night.
Bye.